All right, let's get into it. Today, we're going to solve a really weird puzzle. We're going to look at how a totally disastrous music festival, a bizarre fast food promotion, and, believe it or not, the movies you love are all connected. And it all kicks off with a very, very strange burger.
Consists of an egg hammered to a patty with a plastic nail. What in the world is that? It sounds like something out of a comedy sketch, but I promise you, this was a real item on a real menu from a huge global fast food chain. And the story behind it, well, it tells us a ton about the world we're all living in right now.
So here's the real head-scratcher. What on earth connects a company like Burger King to a radical, and I mean radical, political artist? Because that quote, the one about the nailed-on egg, it comes directly from a Burger King menu that was created in his honor. Yeah, it makes absolutely no sense, but trust me, by the end of this, it will. Okay, so on one side of this, you've got Burger King, the poster child for global fast food capitalism. And on the other side, you have Petra Pawlenski, a Russian performance artist who is famous for these incredibly extreme acts of political protest. We're talking about sewing his own mouth shut to protest censorship, or literally nailing his own scrotum to the cobblestones of Red Square. And Burger King decided to launch a menu for him. It's just wild, right? To figure out why a giant corporation would ever co-opt an act of extreme political defiance just to sell a hamburger, we actually have to hit rewind. We need to look at a completely different story, one I guarantee you've heard of. A story about a party that was sold as an absolute dream, but turned out to be a total nightmare. Right, let's talk about the Fyre Festival. But here's the thing, we're not going to focus on the disaster itself. We're going to talk about the marketing. Because while the festival was a complete and utter failure, the marketing campaign behind it, it was a work of pure genius. They sold a story that was so powerful, people just ignored every single red flag waving in their faces. Now, how they pulled it off is fascinating, and it really boils down to these 5 pillars. First up, they knew exactly who to target. Wealthy millennials who are obsessed with exclusivity. Second, they used influencers and models as social proof. Third, they made that jaw-dropping promo video. It was pure, uncut visual storytelling. Fourth, they totally weaponized social media with that one simple orange tile. And finally, number 5, they mastered scarcity and FOMO, the fear of missing out, to create an insane level of demand. I mean, it was a masterclass.
And the real engine behind this whole thing was a powerful psychological trigger called social proof. Dr. Robert Cialdini explains it perfectly here. Basically, we're wired to look at what other people are doing to figure out what we should be doing. So when Fyre's organizers paid all those supermodels to post about the festival, they weren't just advertising. No, they were sending a message. Hey, this is the place to be. This is what all the cool, important people are.
And this number right here, this is what just blows my mind. Over 400 influencers posted that simple orange square. That's all it was. And the festival sold out, with some tickets going for $12,000 in less than 48 hours. The story was so compelling, nobody even cared that they hadn't seen the actual product. The performance was the product.
But see, Fyre Festival wasn't just some freak accident. It was actually the most extreme symptom of a much bigger cultural shift that's happening all around us. We're now in a world where the curated performance of an experience is often seen as more important than the actual experience itself.
I mean, just look at live music. Big events like Coachella are now called the Influencer Olympics. It's become less about the music and more about getting the perfect photo to prove you were there. And this has led to all sorts of problems. Insane ticket prices, awful concert etiquette, and crowds of people who are watching the show through their phone screens instead of with their own eyes. It's gotten so bad that incredible artists like Mitski have said they feel like they're being consumed as content, not experienced as performers.
And this whole performance culture, it trickles down. As this source from Planet Detroit points out, social media has basically blown up the whole idea of what it means to be a celebrity. Now, every little part of a person's life is a performance that's up for grabs. And that creates this immense pressure, especially for younger people, to live up to these perfectly curated and often totally unrealistic online stories.
So that brings us to the really big question. Why? Why are we so drawn to these specific kinds of stories about secret worlds and exclusive access? Well, the answer is kind of fascinating. It's because we've been culturally conditioned our whole lives by the fiction we read and watch. So let's look at the first big piece of this puzzle, a storytelling trope called the almighty janitor. This is that character who seems totally ordinary on the surface. A gardener, a janitor, a bartender. But secretly, they hold all the power or all the wisdom. They're basically the gatekeeper to a hidden world. Oh, you absolutely know this character. It's Mr. Miyagi, the quiet maintenance man who's secretly a karate master. It's Gwyneth, the bartender who gives Captain Picard the exact advice he needs to heal. Fire Festival sold itself as an almighty janitor experience, a simple party on an island that was secretly the key to an elite hidden universe. We are just wired to fall for that story.
Okay, but what happens when these stories get so detached from reality that they're just completely absurd? You know, like a fast food chain making a burger based on a political dissident? Well, that's when our culture pulls out its main coping mechanism, comedy. And the tool it uses is another classic trope, the comically serious. This is when a character stays completely deadpan and serious in a situation that is absolutely chaotic or ridiculous. Their stone-cold, straight-faced reaction is exactly what makes the whole thing hilarious.
As the folks at TV Tropes put it, everything's funnier with Batman. And why is that? Because taking a super grim, serious character like him and dropping him into a silly, everyday situation, like imagine him trying to order a complicated coffee, is pure comedy gold. This is how we process things that are just too weird to take seriously. And that Burger King protest burger? It's the cultural equivalent of Batman ordering a pumpkin spice latte. It is so absurd, the only way we can respond is to treat it like a joke.
So there we have it. We've got all the pieces of the puzzle on the table. We have the marketing playbook from Fire Festival, we have the huge cultural shift toward performance, and we have the fictional story templates that prime us to believe these narratives and then laugh when they become absurd. This is our toolkit for cracking the case of modern reality. Which brings us all the way back to our central mystery. What is the fundamental thing that connects a music festival that sold a fantasy and a hamburger that co-opted an act of extreme political defiance? What's the thread that ties them together?
And the answer, right here, is that the story has become more valuable than the actual substance. Think about it. Fire didn't sell tickets to a festival, it sold access to a story about being an elite insider. Influencers don't really sell products, they sell a story about a desirable lifestyle. And Burger King didn't sell a sandwich, it sold a bizarre, edgy story just to get our attention. In the economy we live in now, the narrative is everything. So here's the big takeaway. It's all about seeing the pattern. Marketers are literally using the language of fiction to make us want things. Social media gives us a stage to live inside these carefully crafted stories. And when it all gets too ridiculous, we use comedy to make sense of it. The most important skill you can have in this world isn't to reject the stories, but to simply learn how to recognize them, and to always ask yourself, who benefits from me believing them? Which of course leaves us with one final very big question. When everything from our vacations to our lunch is being sold to us using a narrative that's pulled straight from a movie script, how do we ever get past the performance to figure out what's actually real? And maybe more importantly, what story are you living in right now?